Hello and welcome, my name is Nate from Video Games Recon, and as per usual we're going to be recapping this week's popular culture and gaming news that I find interesting and think you will too. Please keep in mind this video was recorded either early Friday evening or Saturday morning on UK time, so some important news could be missing and that this video will be posted most likely on a Saturday or Sunday. Anywho, enough jibber jabber, without any further ado, let's do it to it. As per usual, we have a couple of movie and TV things to talk about, then we can get into a bunch of news coming from this week's Gamescom. First up, a really cool trailer for the film Arrival dropped, and FYI if you haven't seen it yet, well worth a watch. It reminds me of a mix between the start of Man of Steel and the film Contact with a dash of Alien thrown in for good measure. Definitely an interesting movie to keep an eye out for. And in TV news, a television series of Lost Boys is in the works at CW, headed by Rob Thomas of Veronica Mars and iZombie fame. At first, I kinda cringed a little as Lost Boys is a beloved 80s classic that I grew up watching, and the thought of CW making a series of it brought images to my mind of shows like The Vampire Diaries and things of that ilk. However, Rob Thomas has some decent pedigree, and I really like their concept in that they have 7 seasons planned and each season would feature the same specific Lost Boys. However, each season would represent a decade starting in the 60s and working its way into the modern day and near future, with the idea being that the supporting cast, setting, timeline and maybe even the motivations would change each season. So I'm a little torn on this, as although my instinct is for them to leave this one alone, I really like their concept. So we'll have to see how this pans out and whether they'll screw this TV adaptation up like most of these networks have a habit of doing. Okay, let's start the gaming news off with the biggest news possible. Half-Life 3 confirmed. Here's what a couple of jokers want you to think. As at this week's Gamescom, there was a massive advertising banner at the north entrance with Half-Life 3 written on it. However, the writing in German underneath pertained to 3 employees of the 2 German companies that took out the ad, and something about how they'd played the game. Basically, a massive troll and marketing move to drum up interest into whatever those companies were up to. When you step back and think about it, it's pretty obvious. First up, there's no way Valve would print any marketing material about the game, let alone a giant banner for fear of leaks. And secondly, if they ever did announce Half-Life 3, I'm convinced they'd pull the old announce it at the end of a big conference out of nowhere as a massive what the fuck moment, and as a parting gift at the end of their speech would announce, oh, and by the way, the full game's now available on Steam, for everyone to play. If not, just drop it on Steam out of nowhere with no announcement. Seriously, this is a game that needs no hype whatsoever. Speaking of Gamescom, it's going to be a recurring theme throughout this video, for obvious reasons. So let's discuss some of the trailers dropped on and around Gamescom. GameSpot did a really nice collection on a bunch of the hottest trailers. Well worth a look if you want to catch up on a bunch of the most interesting trailers. As long as you have adblocker or don't mind GameSpot's in-video adverts, that is. The first trailer I want to discuss is the Nuka World DLC trailer for Fallout 4 just prior to Gamescom. Personally, I don't really care for any of that Wasteland Workshop type DLC. I haven't even messed with most of it as it just doesn't appeal to me. But both Far Harbor and Nuka World definitely floats my boat, and Nuka World looks super dope, with all the theme park rides and attractions, some of them even playable. Something I'm most interested in seeing though is how the other half lives, as although the NPCs don't seem like outright raiders, they definitely seem to err more on the side of mercenary, so they should be interesting characters to get quests from. And all this with an August 30th release date. Now that's an amusement ride I can get on board with. Next up, another trailer shown at Gamescom is a new Resident Evil 7 trailer that looks to carry on in the same vein as the previous demo, with a very Outlast sort of survival horror theme. But with this cool trailer comes some news about the game, as unlike the beginning hour, this is more like a tech demo and isn't actually in the game. opposed to the content from the new trailer being referred to as the Lantern demo, which is actually in the game, but pertains to a flashback sequence triggered by a VHS tape similar to the beginning hour demo, and will act as a peripheral storyline that may or may not affect Resident Evil 7's main narrative, and are designed to function more like those notes or audio logs from previous games, but in a more engaging and interesting way, which sounds like a really cool idea and only acts to get me more hyped for the release of Resident Evil 7. Next up, the BioShock Remaster also got a bunch of trailers and gameplay shown off at Gamescom, and manages to make what is essentially a 9-year-old game in BioShock 1 look on par with current gen games, and much like the upcoming Skyrim remaster, instill a bunch of hype for an old game. With that, it seems all the games in the remaster will run at 1080p 60 frames per second, look more beautiful, and come with all the DLC for release on September 13th in the US and varying dates through to the 19th in other territories, and all for $60 or £40. Not too shabby. And finally, for trailer talk, except for one other news item we'll get into later, Destiny's new DLC Rise of Iron, which is the last hurrah before moving on to Destiny 2 in 2017. This DLC looks to carry on where the Taken King left off, with a new story, raid, armour and weapons, and even the ability to set private multiplayer matches. So lots to look forward to for Destiny fans. And they're going to need it, as this DLC is probably going to have to tide them over for the next year or so. A Dark Souls 3 announcement is coming next week on the 24th of August, according to the official Dark Souls Twitter, and appears to hint at From Software's first major piece of DLC for Dark Souls 3, giving further credence to the $25 season pass that got leaked early on digital storefronts. If, like most people, you're stoked for Ubisoft's upcoming alternate universe historical combat game, For Honor, then you might want to sign up for their closed alpha test of the game. Although, as it's a closed alpha, it's unlikely you'll get accepted unless you have a significant audience or engagement with the game and/or community. That said, it doesn't hurt to try. Unfortunately, Final Fantasy XV will no longer see a September 30th release date, as according to game director Hajime Tabata, the game has been pushed back to November 29, which is not only disappointing but a little disconcerting, as 2 months is a significant amount of time and makes it sound like the game is having more than just a couple of teething problems, as there are rumours going around that the game doesn't run well and is very buggy at this point in time. That said, what's a couple of months more compared to waiting the better part of a decade, and at least it's still coming out this year and isn't going to be pushed back into 2017 like a lot of other games. That said, regardless of how needed extra time could be in terms of stability and quashing bugs, pushing Final Fantasy XV into next year would be a marketing bungle, as people could lose even more faith in this game after hearing about the supposed performance issues and having to wait even longer for a game that has seen countless delays. On the flip side though, shitting out a hot, unstable mess would be even more of an issue, as faith in Square Enix and Final Fantasy is at an all-time low, and they really need this and the Final Fantasy VII Remake to do well. So let's just hope this delay gives them enough time to get the game to the place it needs to be and there are no further delays. Microsoft's marketing manager Aaron Greenberg discusses how he thinks Project Scorpio is the beginning of the end of console generations, saying that he thinks Project Scorpio doesn't constitute a new generation of hardware per se, saying because it is backwards compatible, and goes on to say that Microsoft believes the future of consoles are without generations. But the caveat to that is, Greenberg saying that this decision isn't set on rails. They'll see how it goes and that Microsoft will learn a lot from this. Basically saying what we already thought. If Scorpio sells well and the market speaks, they'll keep on doing this for the foreseeable future. And if it doesn't, they'll do a U-turn and stick to console generations as we know them. My thoughts on this are that, for better or for worse, I think both the Neo and the Scorpio will sell really well. So for the time being, I'd have to agree with Aaron Greenberg's thoughts on the matter. Personally, I have no interest in buying either anytime soon, until these consoles become modular or my current console breaks or becomes obsolete. As at the moment, I feel these moves further justify PC gaming, as in the long term, buying new console hardware every 3 years or so will be exponentially more expensive than gradually upgrading your PC components at your own pace. And combining that with very cheap games available on Steam and other PC digital storefronts. Anywho, back in the present, where console generations are still a thing, Xbox outsells PS4 in the month of July and without the help of the Xbox One S. So this is all down to an aggressive price point from Xbox, which although makes sense, is a little surprising, as you'd think people would at least want to wait for the improved Xbox One S, and is perhaps a counter argument to the whole Project Scorpio malarkey. Maybe price point for a lot of people is way more important than performance. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Something Microsoft is probably trying to downplay though, and people don't seem to really be talking about, is that the 3DS outperformed both consoles and took the #1 spot in hardware sales for the month of July. Most likely due to the influx in interest in Nintendo products thanks to Pokemon Go. And finally, saving the best/worst for last, is that wonderful clusterfuck Metal Gear Survive. This is by far the biggest new announcement at Gamescom this year and totally blindsided a lot of people. So, basically after Konami split up with Hideo Kojima and basically being branded the worst game publisher in the industry, the way Konami, or Pachinkonami as Jim Sterling coined it, wants to win back fans' faith and respect is by pumping out a by-the-numbers zombie/horde game set in the Metal Gear universe. Wow, bravo Pachinkonami, you've really outdone yourself now. This is exactly what Metal Gear and Silent Hill fans wanted from you. Perhaps you guys really should just stick to your pachinko machines and Pro Evolution games, and just sell your other IPs to a competent publisher who will put some effort in and at least gives a solitary fuck. Don't get me wrong, I like a good mindless, or if you'd prefer brainless zombie game as much as the next man, as I'm a fan of COD Zombies and games of that ilk. But this genre is already so oversaturated and is becoming extremely tiresome. It's such a competitive market that it's not going to make much headway and is unlikely to outperform all those other games like COD Zombies, Left 4 Dead, Dying Light, etc, etc. They have been doing this stuff for years. Let's just call it what it is, shall we? It's another cash grab like Umbrella Corps was on a beloved franchise. The only upside I can see to this is that they haven't shoehorned in Snake or any of the other main characters into this mess of a concept. So, that was my recap of the week's gaming news or points of interest. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff I'll miss each week, so feel free to post anything you're into that I missed in the comments section for discussion. Anywho, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe for more BS of a similar nature. Thank you and goodbye.